Welcome back, Boku no Hero fans, to yet another exciting review for Chapter 225. I'm your host, Dab, and I'm here with my co-host, Kor. With our chapter, we of course begin with the introduction of Deika City. It of course is in the mountains with limited routes into it, surrounded by nature. It is the perfect hiding location for a base of operations or a fortress for an army to defend, as it will limit heroes, of course, down the road if they were to ever have to siege, attack, or whatnot. So we can only imagine that will be something that we'll see down the road, that this will become a base of operations for the most likely the League of Villains. But we have not even begun to see the outcome of the battle. And of course, this is where Giran is being held. He states he's not the type to be the savable type, the damsel in distress. And of course, that as soon as the Nomus are unleashed, that they would easily level the city and defeat all of them. But Redestro does quickly state that he has three reasons, which of course trumps his two. One of them being that there has been no noticeable Nomu activity, except for the exception of his number two, which is of course the high end, was the exception to that. Its name is Black, and without those Nomus, the League is basically weak. And that he also mentions, since they couldn't retrieve Black from Dobby's comment, that the high ends are not ready yet to be used, so they're a finite resource.
Yeah, those no moves are definitely important for the League of Villains. Without them, they're basically amateurs, or like nothing more than regular villains. They have no structure, they have no money. It's going to be interesting seeing what's going to happen in the future and how this outcome is going to be.
Exactly, and of course, they're of course in a city filled with Liberation Army who are all highly trained. They've devoted their lives. Multiple generations of them have devoted their lives to their goal. We're of course introduced to the Liberation Army Lieutenant Curious here. She is of course against Himiko, and that the League of Villains shouldn't be taking all the presses. There's basically newcomers to the party, while of course they have been around for generations. We can only imagine what other basis they have laid, what other plans they have, as their plan goes much deeper than the League of Villains. And of course, she requests basically an interview with Himiko. She points out that Himiko was a normal girl who descended into madness, and that this will be a wonderful article, and it takes her back to her days as a field reporter. Of course, Himiko's not really giving her much attention there. She quickly throws a knife, taking out the store clerk that's part of the Liberation Army just to the right of Curious. Whether that was a fatal wound or just a wound, we don't know if he died or what happened to him yet. I would assume it was a kill shot, though. She quickly disappears, just like when Deku was fighting with her in the provisional license. And I can only imagine that has something to do with her quirk, that basically she just changes into someone else and is able to kind of blend in. We don't know if it's just limited to people or if to other things as well, but she quickly disappears and then is quickly right above Curious, coming down to stab her. She is quickly knocked away by several of the other soldiers that were surrounding Curious. Fight gets more intense there, and Curious is only just more interested in what is exactly going through Himiko's mind, what has turned her into this bloodthirsty monster when she was such an average student.
Yeah, I would honestly like to see flashbacks of her when she was in middle school, because oh my god,
I think
he
with the
is
coming
crazy.
chapters, I definitely agree. We'll probably get something there, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, Core, but I do think we'll be seeing something in the coming chapters. Kind of like how we in the last few chapters we got kind of a layback to Spinner's past about how he came to be what he is. So I can only imagine. But go ahead, Core.
I would honestly like to see some of her victims too. If she has some kind of like serial killer pattern or what with her.
I'll probably be putting out a theory video on what I believe is going on with Himiko by what we've seen of her and of course what we see of her in this chapter. But I don't want to go too in detail because I want to leave, some of the good stuff for my theory video. But we quickly learn here that from this fight that Curious's quirk is called landmine. Basically anything she touches becomes explosive, and they're not very strong, but she can do numerous explosions. So while she can't do one big blast, she can do multiple blasts that can definitely weaken you and harm you. Several of them, of course, go on to charge in on Himiko. She throws out her syringes to suck in all their bloods. It gives her basically a choice of who she's going to turn into. But of course, Curious deduces her quirk by seeing how her mask works and her syringes, and has, of course, commends her skill usage and what she perceives to be just that killing intent. And of course, Himiko ends up exploding from this because she had turned her soldiers into living bombs. So when she took in their blood, she basically took in that explosive quirk into herself, and it keeps her from being able to change and kind of hide amongst the ranks. And in the previous panels, when she kind of disappeared, I have a feeling that she had managed to get a hold of someone's blood and she turned into someone else. That's why no one really noticed her move around. And that's why she's kind of like, that's how your quirk works. So I don't think she's just able to disappear. I think she just turns into other people and you just don't notice her having changed.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the landmine quirk works. That's definitely a powerful ability. He must be one of the upper echelons of the Liberation Army.
Seeing about how easily she's taking out Himiko, I would only assume that she's upper echelons. God help us if she's not, because that only means that there's even stronger people than her. We really haven't seen Destro fight. We haven't seen some of the other people we were introduced to in chapter 223 that are part of the Liberation Army. And of course, there's still the one that's wearing that kind of winter jacket. We don't know anything about him, but I'm assuming that one's more of a bodyguard. So I'm assuming that he's probably the one of the strongest, but doesn't hold any super like CEO role like the other ones do with companies and things like that. And then, of course, she makes it very noticeable that she's aware of Himiko's background. Of course, we know now she's born, August 7th, that she's 17. She's the eldest daughter of her family, so she has other sisters, so there are other ones that have, a similar quirk at least, or some sort of variation of it. She, of course, disappeared shortly after middle school. Curious has interviewed her parents and classmates, which is most curious because we haven't seen, any of that kind of stuff. So I'd be very intrigued if we get a flashback to that in the next chapter. And then asks why did she throw that life away? Which once again, I have many theories and thoughts on that of what happened there, especially with the flashback where she seems to be standing there kind of in like a darkened mask with what appear to be friends, and in one of the panels appears to be Deku. She seems very blanked out. Probably a false memory is what I'm predicting that is, but we can't say just yet. And then, of course, Curious mentions that every, if you're going to report, it needs heart. So, of course, she's trying to get that build up to this amazing story behind Himiko's past. And then, of course, as we head into it, Himiko asks exactly what is a normal life. What could be normal to you is not normal to that person, and so on and so forth. And in one of those final panels, we, of course, see what appears to be the mask breaking away, and we see her holding looks like a razor blade, and she commends Curious for making the world a wonderful place, and that she's just trying to live a normal life. So I can only imagine that is kind of hinting at her life, that she's just wearing a mask, that she's always been that way, and that in middle school she finally tore away from that mask, and we can only assume that she's a psychopath.
Yeah, it's. I think it's kind of alluding to she sees her current life as normal, and this is who she is.
Exactly,
So,
I agree. She doesn't see it any different than the rest of us do.
yeah, it looks like we're gonna get probably like a story of each of the villains. That's what I'm thinking. This arc is gonna go at until the conclusion between the Liberation Army and the villains.
I
What
definitely
happens
agree on
between
that.
that?
Because we already got some background on Twice. We've got Spinner. Now we've got Himiko. The only ones really left are, of course, Dabi, and then with Mr. Compress. Because we even got Tomaru in this arc as well. We got more of him. We, of course, there's the theories out there on Dabi being Endeavor's eldest son. And then we have no idea really on Mr. Compress. We've had no real background with him. But I can only imagine we'll see more of him, as we only really saw Spinner in this chapter for 2-3 panels, and of course most of it was Himiko. So I'm imagining that we'll see probably Compress get some love probably within the next few chapters. I probably wouldn't say the next one. I'm going to say that's probably going to be another Himiko heavy chapter.
Agreed. And that's it for our review. I would give this 8 out of 10.
I'd agree with an 8 out of 10. It definitely going in a good direction. It was a good chapter to read. I enjoyed it. We're of course seeing more quirks. We're getting that lead up. We're seeing more enemies, more things developing. Always glad with Horikoshi. Always does a great job. I've never been disappointed with any of the chapters he's put out. But I'm loving the direction this arc is going.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to get to know them, their characters more. seeing their character development.
Exactly. And then just make sure to tune in next time to our weekly review. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and of course, ring the bell so you get notifications. And then, of course, leave a comment. We're always glad to hear from any of our viewers. Be the first one. We've put out 7 videos, no comments yet. Be the first.